Will join me in welcoming Andrew Robb.
Well, thanks very much, Ken, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So much is happening at the moment that I wondered a few times in the last 3 or 4 days why I'd said yes to this, but anyway. So I hope I've got something which I can share some experience with you, which may hopefully be of some use. Of course, I'm very hopeful that we are at the moment in the middle of a change process, and we'll see what happens in 10 or 11 days. But and I suspect many of you are enjoying the caretaker period, so I think the numbers might have swelled because of the election. So, good luck to you. What I thought I'd do today, I had 18 years in agriculture and 8 of those running the National Farmers Federation, and then involved as Federal Director of the Liberal Party in several campaigns, and then running a national company, IT company, and I worked with the Packers for several years, and that was a bit of change and reform that went on there. So now back for 6 years now in Parliament with wearing various hats, both in government and in opposition. So I thought I'd share with you perhaps the period that I learnt most about how you might influence change and what are the principles was during my period as campaign director and federal director of the Liberal Party. And I did have the good fortune of running the 96, but I also ran the 93, which was the unlosable election, which we duly lost. But it's where I got my twitch from. But it is, I think, the period of my life when I've certainly learnt the most. The losses are a big thing, and I think it's an important thing for all of us to remember that if you've suffered a loss or a failure, that it's very disappointing and it can really affect you for some time, but you've got to look at what you've learned out of it. And I must say, I only discovered really over the subsequent 3 or 4 years how much I had learnt. And not only learnt, but how much I'd been hardened by it. I think I was prepared to not be ruthless, but far tougher with people and with asserting you've still got to listen, but ultimately you've got to take decisions and ensure if you're in a leadership position in any change process, at whatever level of the organisation you're with, it's quite critical that you do back yourself in the end. And at some stage, you, if you're a leader, will need to make a decision. And it might be the wrong one, but if you know your stuff, you'll get more right than wrong. So I thought today, one thing that had helped me, and over the years, I've been a great student of Machiavelli. And in fact, I do often carry The Prince around with me. It's only 90 pages, so it's a good size for me. And but I do love going back into it and trying to associate different little extracts with what's going on. I suppose the key point of my address here this afternoon is that nothing really changes. I found that as an agricultural economist. I'd be back occasionally looking at agricultural economics journals from the 1930s, and honestly it could have been taken out and put into the 1970s or 80s, and it still rang true. I mean, we just keep going around circles with even a lot of the issues in each area, and I suspect you would experience that. Every job I've been in, after 5 or 6 years, I've got sick of it because I'm back on all the issues I started on. So it is, I think, for me, that the principles haven't changed in 500 years. He wrote a lot of things, his observations. He was a great observer of change, really, and of what drove change and some of the rules and principles. And I thought I'd just use Machiavelli this afternoon to help share some of my experiences and maybe align it with some current day experience. But he captured for me some of the fundamentals that we need to remember in the whole change or reform process. So I thought I'd start with Machiavelli and probably finish with him too. But the first thing about getting reforms adopted and the lessons, the first thing I think that ring true for me, the sort of challenge of change. Change is never easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and we'd all be happy. But invariably, I find we are, by our own human nature, it is a key feature of human nature that we prefer the status quo. So it is always uncomfortable, whether in whatever circumstance we're talking about, invariably it is uncomfortable to change the status quo for those around you and whatever. So you've got to appreciate that you want to change something, you've got a challenge on your hands. And often it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Even something you think that looks patently logical and obvious, you'll find it is still extremely difficult. And Machiavelli said, "It should be borne in mind that there is nothing more difficult to handle, more doubtful of success and more dangerous to carry through than initiating changes in a state's constitution. The innovator makes enemies of all those who prospered under the old order, and only lukewarm support is forthcoming from those who would prosper under the new." Now, I think the parallel is very much, I mean, I know it is, that statement is very true of constitutional change, but the sentiment reflects the essence, I think, of all change. People look to what they're going to lose, the discomfort that they've got to experience. Now, you've got to try and put yourself in the shoes, I think, of those people that are going to be influenced for good and for bad, and to remember that the ones who are being influenced and having their life changed for what they see as the worst, you've got to have a strategy to deal with that. The second thing is that you must make the case for change. And Machiavelli said, "We must distinguish between innovators who stand alone and those who depend on others. That is, between those who have to achieve their purposes, can force the issue, and those who must use persuasion. In the second case, persuasion, they always come to grief, having achieved nothing. When, however, they depend on their own resources and can force the issue, then they are seldom endangered." He goes on, "That is why all armed prophets have conquered and unarmed prophets have come to grief. Besides what I've said already, the populace is by nature fickle. It is easy to persuade them of something, but difficult to confirm them in that persuasion. Therefore, one must urgently arrange matters so that when they no longer believe, they can be made to believe by force." So I don't think I read that. Therefore, one must urgently arrange matters so that when they no longer believe, they can be made to believe by force. Okay, so I suppose the political term or context I took out of that is that you must make the case for change, that you must drive change. In the case of politics, we invariably drive change through the negative. People believe the negative before the politics. They believe the negative before the positive in politics. And, you know, I'll give you an example. I remember the 96 election, we had a character called Warren Inch. In fact, he's running again. He retired 3 years ago, and he's having another go for the seat of Leichhardt up in North Queensland. He's a crocodile farmer and a cattleman and other things, and a character, and well known around the district. But we went up there with a brochure, and the introductory sort of brochure, and we wanted to see how it would be accepted. And it was a typical political introductory brochure, and we've got in that brochure, we put it in the middle of a focus group from Cairns, and it had, hello, I'm Warren Inch, and I stand for a situation where we can find jobs for the 5,000 young people unemployed. And I stand for a situation where we don't have 4,000, where we remove the 4,000 people waiting on waiting lists. And I stand for this, and I stand for that. And the moderator said, "Well, what do you think of Warren Inch?" And they looked at it and read it and said, "It's just another bloody politician, right? This just reads like a politician." So we went back 2 weeks later and we had another mock brochure, And we've got, hi, I'm Warren Inch. And I tell you what I don't stand for. I don't stand for a situation where 5,000 of our young people can't get a job. And I don't stand for a situation where 4,000 people have to wait for elective surgery. And I don't stand, and I don't stand, and I don't stand. And the moderator said, what do you think it is? Well, this fellow, he's a good man. We know what he stands for, you see. Well, it was an eye-opener for me, and with a lot of our communication, we came back, looked at what was the positive we wanted to get across, and then would flip it into the negative. Now, I don't say that's true of all circumstance, because I know, having worked in the commercial arena, you know, the positive works very strongly, as we see. If it didn't, there's trillions of dollars being wasted by advertising agencies. But in politics at least, and certainly in lots of situations, especially when you have got a large group that are resisting change, you've got to make the case for change and then often convey it in, put it in some sort of negative terms, the proposition that you want. And I felt that the one that sticks out in my mind, and there's a former colleague down here that would have the same feeling, was work choices. Really, that was something that landed in the party room, to the surprise of most people in the party room. And really, 6 months before, there'd been no case made to the community that there was a problem that needed to be solved by this particular body of policy. And I think from that day, in many respects, we're on the back foot, and then it got worse and worse. And the thing is, whatever you want to